The day she asked me to hide a package is the day my life split in half. She told me to shove it in the back of the closet behind the winter coats, like it was something embarrassing that couldn't be seen. She sounded nervous but controlled, like someone practicing calm. I said okay because I had said okay to so many things she asked for over the 7 years we'd been together. She kissed my cheek and left on a work call. I closed the closet door and felt the weight of the box against my palms. It was small, heavy. I should have left it alone. I didn't. I had been keeping secrets too. Small ones. Looking at her phone when she left it unattended. Opening her mail when she thought I was at work. Not because I wanted to catch her, but because I needed to know the shape of our life. We had built a life on tidy facts. She was a physical therapist. She loved weekend hikes. Her mother was a teacher. She texted me every morning that she loved me. Those facts fell together into a person I trusted. I lifted the lid. Inside were passports. Not just one, but 3 passports with different names and dates of birth. A stack of birth certificates from different states. A ring box with a different engraving than mine. A folder stamped with a law firm letterhead that thanked her for a donation to a charity that didn't exist. Then a small envelope with photographs. All of her, but in different frames. Different haircuts, different clothes, different men in the pictures, kissing her cheek or holding her hand. One photo had my apartment in the background. Another had a different address, different city. There was a ledger too, an exposed column of bank transfers, small amounts, months of transactions to unknown people. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely turn the pages. The first real crack was that I didn't immediately feel anger. I felt dizzy. I felt like a person who had been awake through the night and suddenly realized their house was built on a sinkhole. For an hour, I sat on the edge of the bed with the box and stared at the photos like they might rearrange into something else. Then I called Lena. Lena, my oldest friend, and didn't tell her what I'd found. I just said I needed to talk. Lena came over and sat on the floor with the photos spread across the coffee table. She knew her. They had met once at a party. Lena said she didn't know what to think. She asked me if I'd talked to her. I told her I had not. That was the second crack. You could say the marriage had been slow rot. White lies about being late at the office, vanishing weekends that matched up with mysterious texts, but nothing that screamed this many lives. I wanted to confront her then, but I also wanted proof I could live with. I confronted her that night. She walked into the living room and saw the passports on the table. She didn't deny anything at first. She laughed at me like I had walked into a joke. She told me she needed to be careful, that there were people from her past who liked to make trouble, that the accounts were for a trust she managed for a sick relative. She told me that people would never understand why she did what she did and that I should trust her because she had always protected me. She asked me to take the passports back into the closet and forget. She sounded panicked in a way I hadn't heard before. She also sounded practiced. The holy shit moment came when she pulled out her phone and it buzzed. A message preview popped up. A photograph of a hotel room receipt with a man's name and a booking date that was the exact date she had told me she was at a conference in another state. Her face went white. She grabbed the phone back from me and tried to explain it away as work. Her voice thickened. My throat closed. I felt like I had been punched. After that, everything detonated. I started sleeping on the sofa. I memorized every car in the parking lot. I opened her mail when she wasn't home. I hacked. Not in the dramatic movie way, but I looked up public records and found a pattern. Different names, small companies she had registered and folded, donations to non-existent charities, a shell company that had paid for a condo in a city we had never visited. There were messages from women asking questions I couldn't parse, men thanking her for introductions, a bank wire for $20,000 from an account with a name I did not know. I confronted her again, angrier. She began to yell. She said I had no right to invade her privacy. She accused me of trying to control her. She said we were fragile because of my insecurity. Her mother called the next morning and we talked for the first time in months. Her mother told me I was imagining things, that she had always been an independent person, that she had helped her through a difficult divorce years ago. Suddenly, allies were splitting. A false victory came a week in. She sobbed on the kitchen floor and said she would come clean. She told me the whole story, parts of it that made sense, stitched with plausible motives. She said she had been in witness protection years ago, that she'd had to change her name, that she'd been forced to disappear from abusive people. She said she kept extra identities to protect herself because the men she'd left were dangerous. She showed me a document that looked official, stamped and signed, and it had an old address I recognized from a news article about a criminal ring. For a night I breathed. I wanted to believe her. I made coffee for her. I told myself I would be brave, that I would be the kind of husband who loved someone complicated. But the truce lasted only days. The ledger resurfaced with new lines. a voicemail from a woman left on my phone asking where her money had gone. A friend of mine, Adam, who ran payroll at a nonprofit, texted me a photo of a donation receipt she had posted online that didn't match the charity's public records. I tried to believe she was promoting a private relief fund. The transfers kept coming. My sister started avoiding visiting us. At Thanksgiving, her sister-in-law cornered me and asked if I knew about the storm of direct messages her Instagram had been getting. Accusations, threats, screenshots of our home. Rumors started like small fires, and then they licked up the curtains. Things tightened. Her story leaned on protective lies, but the truth pressed back. A bank froze an account after an alert. Our landlord called to say there had been a lien filed. My boss commented that I'd been distracted. Lena stopped speaking to her at first and then stopped speaking to me because I brought pictures when she asked for proof. The people who had comforted me turned away like friends on a boat watching someone sink. My lowest point was not a single event. It was a series of small humiliations that compounded until I wanted to dissolve. We went to dinner with friends and they sat across from us and whispered. A neighbor asked if we were getting a divorce. My phone chimed with legal forms, the symbol of my trust, broke in ways I did not know how to fix. I drove to the place where we'd talked about buying a house and sat in the empty lot and felt like the ground under me had been stolen. Then the internal collapse came. I realized I had been doing a thing I never told anyone. I'd been covering for her for years. When she left early for a doctor's appointment, I'd called her employer and pretended to be her assistant. When payments to strange companies came through, I rationalized them as investments or prepayments for trips I never took. I had enabled her by not questioning. I saw the moral line where I'd stepped across, not because I condoned deception, but because I loved the illusion we had made together. That realization hit like someone erasing my fingerprints from everything I had ever touched. I could have walked away. I could have pretended nothing was wrong. Instead, I chose a new strategy. I started collecting everything. I made copies of the passports and letters and took photos of the ledger. I recorded a few of her phone calls by letting her tell me a story and asking questions while my voice recorder ran. I emailed myself screenshots and saved receipts. I hired a lawyer who did not blink at the mess. Lena came back and sat with me in a sterile office while I signed forms that would allow us to freeze accounts, to subpoena records. Nothing about that felt clean. It felt like war. But I was tired of being passive. The first weapon I used was truth. I took the copies and the recordings to the bank and to an investigator. The investigator smiled a little when I pulled out the ledger and said he'd seen patterns like this before. He said people who make multiple identities make mistakes. They reuse phone numbers. They use similar handwriting. They underwrite transfers from the same bank. They get sloppy. He said we could follow the money. We followed it and discovered an address. And then another. Men showed up at our building asking questions. One of them threatened to burn down our mailbox if we didn't return a sum she had promised and never sent. She had cultivated a crowd of people who thought she was a savior, a connector, a solution, and they had given her money in cash, in Venmo, in wires. When I showed up with a lawyer, some of them were relieved to talk. A few were angry. A handful fell silent and handed over screenshots when their names were read. The climactic confrontation was not in a courtroom. It was in our kitchen at midnight after the investigator had left. I had laid out the copies, the messages, the photographed faces. She sat at the table and for the first time did not try to charm. She told me the whole thing in a voice like a coin scraping on a table. She admitted taking money. She said she had meant to pay back some of it. She said the stories about witness protection were true, and also half true, and also lies she'd told to protect the other lies. She asked me to forgive her. She asked me to help her make it right. She said she loved me. She sounded exhausted, not rehearsed. I did not hold her. I did not slap her. I did the only calm thing I could think of. I told her we would both go to the bank in the morning and start an audit. I told her we'd deliver every name we had to the investigator. I told her she couldn't use my name anymore. I told her I was filing for separation. She asked for one more night. I let her have it. There were consequences. The police opened a case. I gave them everything. Her mother moved out of town suddenly. Her Instagram collapsed with people posting screens and accusations. A few people claimed they had been scammed out of sizable sums. A man from another state accused her of identity theft. The media reached out like vultures. Some of our friends took her side. Some of them took mine. I stopped answering the door to people I used to trust. In the end, she left before the hearing. She packed the one small suitcase she'd left and put the passports in a shoebox and took a cab to the bus station. She kissed my forehead goodbye and said I would understand when things settled. That was the opposite of the opening. Then she was gone. The quiet after was not peaceful at first. There were meetings, legal fees, emails, and a parade of people with sad faces. but I slept without someone watching me pretend to be someone else. I learned to tell the truth about small things again. I deleted the fake accounts she had created for me and closed the shell company that carried her donations. I moved some of our money into accounts she could not access. Lena helped me find a therapist, and every week we sat and talked about trust like it was a muscle that had to be exercised. A year later, the case settled. Some of the money was returned. She pled to a fraud charge in a plea that surprised no one. She got probation and ordered to pay restitution, which she is still making payments on. I read the court transcript and my stomach dropped at how small and legal everything sounded. Page numbers and fees, not the raw nights and the quiet breakfasts. It was businesslike and mercilessly dull in contrast to the chaos of the year before. I don't know if she ever loved me in the straightforward way I had loved her. Maybe she did at times. Maybe she loved the person I wanted her to be. The truth I live with now is simpler and colder. People will make themselves beautiful to survive, even if the beauty is a constructed set of lies that rip everything else apart. The house sold. I moved into a studio with a bookshelf and a kettle and a neighbor who sometimes brought over muffins. My phone is quieter. My mail is simpler. I sleep better. I still keep a copy of one of the passports in a drawer, not because I want to remember her, but because I need proof that I did not imagine the sinkhole. Sometimes truth is a document on a table. Sometimes it is a clean kitchen at midnight. The opposite of panic is boundaries. And for the first time in a long time, I can say no and mean it.